Our next speaker was born and educated in India. Equipped with an MBA and $9 in his pocket, he migrated to the U.S. in 1986. Winning a sales contest in 1990 earned him a ticket to a seminar conducted by the legendary motivator Zig Ziglar. This chance encounter would be the catalyst that shaped the next 2 decades as he joined the Ziglar Corporation in 1991 as a telemarketer, and eventually he became its Vice President of Global Operations. Through training, teaching, and facilitating seminars all over the world, he launched his professional speaking career. As one of only 2 executive coaches personally trained by Zig Ziglar, he has successfully delivered his message of hope, humor, and balance in more than 50 countries on 6 continents and throughout the continental United States. Please welcome to the stage, Krish Dhanam.
Next the walls were closed on me, and I discovered that my castle stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand.
Thank you for that warm welcome, which I so richly deserve, but so seldom get. Some of you have figured out through perceptive intuition that I'm not a native of Texas. In fact, some of you are wagering money on me right now, saying he's from India, he's probably a doctor. A few of you are convinced I'm an engineer, and some of you are pretty sure I own a motel. But owing to the fact that I'm from a different country, and owing to the fact that we may have some communication problems, my message is very simple. It's been said that every 3rd person in this world is either amazingly beautiful and unusually bright, incredibly handsome and off the charts brilliant. Take a good look at the person on your left. Go ahead. Now take a good look at the person on your right. Like me, you're probably convinced it ain't either one of them. From this moment forward, think of yourself as that 3rd person. You were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. So we have something unique as an organization. Do I need to just make my point with power? Oh, there it is. We have a different company, a different way, and a different result. You've heard others before me speak about the uniqueness in time and space that you are at. And yet you made a commitment. Hear me carefully. The food you will eat on the mountaintop of this journey only grows in the valley you're in right now, because nothing grows on the mountaintop. Instead of looking forward to where you can go with the vision that is cast, look back to where you came from and bring enough people to where you are, and on their shoulders, they'll take you to the mountaintop. Life is tough, but if you're tough on yourself, life becomes infinitely easier on you. Most people wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, do I have a prayer at all?" If the mirror ever looked back at you and said, "With that kind of hairdo, go back to bed," listen to the mirror. If you walk out in this world looking like the picture on your driver's license or like you've been weaned on a pickle, ain't nobody going to treat you like a glamour shot. If you're happy, tell your face. Today we celebrate Memorial Day in these here United States. I came here with $9 in my pocket in 1986, wondering if there was something called a dream. People often ask me, "How poor were you?" We were so poor we'd go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, lick other people's fingers. Now we had running water. If you needed it, you ran and got it. And that's not reasonably far from the truth. See, my father studied under a streetlight to graduate from college. My mother was a child bride. She was betrothed to my daddy when she was little shy of 14, married to him at 16, brother at 17, me at 19. That's my background. Last year at the age of 83, my daddy got his PhD. At the age of 75, my mama got her master's. Daniel talked about a building, and he spent a considerable amount of time describing the foundation. What are the foundations of your life? In the foundations of your life, you need to ask yourself some questions if you want to be part of this different vision, if you want to be part of this different opportunity. First ask yourself, who are you? I've been speaking now for 25 years, and I can tell you without any fear of error, when people say, who are you? I always answer the same way. I'm Anila's husband and Nick's dad. That was a blessing. Everything else was a choice. Mary Crowley said, you are free up until the moment of choice, then the choice controls the chooser. Who are you? Where do you come from? We live in a fickle world in the Western worlds that we occupy now. We borrow money that we don't have, to buy things that we don't need, to impress people we don't like, and become someone we can't recognize. So when a culture is presented to you that says it's not about the how, it's about the why, take it to heart. Because when you know why, any how will do. Everything begins to change. That's when you can stand in front of the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, here I am, what's my call? Life begins to manifest in different ways. Go ahead, you're going to do it right. So I've got a small plan that I want to share with you. And the content of this is just the acrostic. We're using the word plan. Planning for a new direction requires altering the input into your mind. I met some amazing people here. Yesterday, while I was standing in line to check in, shout out to those 3 beautiful ladies from northeastern Iowa. There you are. They kept me company, and I asked them some questions, and we engaged. And they asked me what I was going to talk about, and I shared with them a few ideas. But what is this thing about changing the input in your life and making an altering sequence? My mentor and hero, Zig Ziglar. I got my start selling books and tapes at events like this where that giant of motivation spoke. Today, he's looking down from heaven at his legacy. Why don't we applaud him so he can hear us? One day, he was speaking to a large gathering at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. And I went and asked him, I said, Mr. Z, can I ever do that? He said, of course you can. I said, I can't imagine. He said, if you can't, you won't. 2005, I was in a packed stadium at the Georgia Dome, 35,000 people in attendance. They put me between Rudy Giuliani and Jimmy Carter just to stop a fight, but they put me there. When I finished, the audience responded favorably. This little immigrant who had come here with $9 in his pocket was crying great gully washer tears as I climbed into the limo. I had now become his associate, and I was allowed to travel with him. And when I got into the limo, I hugged my hero and I cried. I said, Mr. Ziglar, how can I thank you? And he said the words that changed the input. He said, son, all I did was open one door. But I trained you so well, you ran in looking for light switches. Now go be a light switch flipper for everybody else and be my legacy. Today and tomorrow, you're going to be challenged by input. See, earthquakes and hurricanes get all the publicity, but termites do more damage. You can make radical changes in minute steps. Eric Hoffer said, in times of change, it is the learners who will inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped for a world that no longer exists. When the new input is being presented to you, eradicate the old input that has not worked. And suddenly you will find yourself making some radical changes in the input in your mind. Look at the second thing. Learning new behavior takes effort. January 1 in America and most of the world now, everybody makes a goal, and it's usually a health goal. Husband says you got to lose the weight. Wife says you got to lose the weight. Doctor says you got to lose the weight. Finally, the poor sap says, I'll do it. For 13 days, he'll steam everything. Broccoli, dashboard, cardboard, headboard. He'll eat every god-awful thing. Day number 14, some dirty dog will roll the pastry cart by. With considerable disdain that comes from lack of discipline, this schmuck will eat one lousy donut. While the powdered sugar is still fresh on his upper lip, someone else will say, 2 for 1 chicken fried steak, you want to go? And you have that all-important self-talk. You say, I've already blown it today. I'll start back up tomorrow. Que sera, sera. Another year goes by. Let this not be another decision. Let this be a final decision. Let this not be just another chance. Let this be that final chance. When you change the behavior, when you begin to ask yourself what it is you want to do. See, 97% of the people in this world operate in the comfort zone. Good, honest, tax-paying, law-abiding. 3% operate in the effective zone. The difference between comfort and effectiveness is called growth, and growth is uncomfortable. Raise your right hand for me as high as it'll go. Now raise it a wee bit higher. Why didn't you do that to begin with? I said as high as it'll go. We all save a little bit for a rainy day that never comes. In Texas, we call this the dead armadillo syndrome. Now, I love Texas. I've lived there for 31 years. I moved there from India and never left. Someone said, why do you love Texas? 3 rules. If it's moving, we tend to hug it. Very, very hospitable people. If it's not, we sell it. Very industrious. If it argues, we shoot it. Very just. But in Texas, we have a saying, we call it the dead armadillo syndrome. Having lived there for over 3 decades, I've yet to see a live armadillo. They're always dead in a 70-mile-an-hour speed zone. I'm wondering why armadillos occasionally don't have a gathering like this and say, dude, Dad died here. Mom died here. Everybody we know died right here. Let's find a school zone. So when you are given input from people who have blazed the trail, who have dotted the landscape with the expertise of their own recognition, who are saying, I have thought this through and I'm casting a vision. But most humbling for me, sitting backstage, was an organization that has the courage of its own conviction to bow in prayer to the living God. Everything changes. Everything changes. So the eternal arithmetic still works. You plus God equals enough. Learn to change this behavior. Watch me carefully. The thoughts you have become the ideas that control your mind. The ideas that control you start leaking into habits that you display. The habits you display becomes the behavior you exhibit. The behavior you exhibit becomes the character that defines you. The character that defines you reveals the destiny you will have. The very way you think reveals how it's going to end. Someone asked me one time, you talk a good game. What do you want people to say at your funeral? I want the pastor to say, he's still moving. Because I got things to do. But I can tell you without any fear of error, if it wasn't for that godly woman that God placed in my life 31 years ago, who has cheerled me every day and prayed for me every night, I would not be your speaker today. Learning new behaviors takes effort. I was speaking in Chicago and a man came up to me and said, I really disliked your speech. He said, why? He said, my wife came up to me after your talk and said that I don't say nice things about her. I said, well, that sounds like a personal problem. He said, no, I need quantitative advice. How often should I tell my wife I love her? I said, before somebody else does. It's not complicated. Old behavior has brought us here. Marriage, grand. Divorce, 100 grand. But learning new behaviors every day. Brian asked me, what is your discipline? Without any fear of error, I wake up between 30 minutes of 4:30 in the morning, no matter where in the world I am. I may take a nap a little later in the day, but I will wake up at 4:30 and read something to put into my mind every morning something that is good and clear and pure and powerful and positive. Psychologists have said the first input into your mind every morning is more powerful than the next 5. In fact, one of the things I'd encourage you not to do is listen to country western music. I live in Texas, and this doesn't go over very well when I give this advice. Here are some of the lyrics. My wife ran away with my best friend, and I sure do miss him. Or you're the reason our kids are ugly. These things communicate. But if you listen to information that is fresh, that is dynamic, that is game-changing, on the way to work, listen to information on sales and marketing and leadership and building. On the way home, listen to information on relationships and upbuilding. That way you will go from an 8-hour and a 10-hour and a 12-hour person to a 24-hour champion. For 8 to 10 hours of the day, practice the skill that allows you to make a living. For the balance of the time, invest in the will that allows you to shape a life. When skill and will come together in one cataclysmic moment for the very first time on God's green earth, you will have become that created 24-hour champion. Once you plan and you learn, achieving new outcomes takes hope. See, hope without gratitude is hopelessness. Change without strategy is cluelessness. Since it is Memorial Day, let's memorialize that great patriot who stood up at the House of Burgesses in Virginia at the Second Congress and said, "It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen cry peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has already begun. The next gale that sweeps in from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What do they want? For is life so dear or peace so sweet that it be purchased at the price of the chains of slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what path others might take, but for me, give me liberty or give me death." And an entire nation marched forward. You want to lead? You want to build a team? You want to build a legacy? Stop thinking inheritance. If you're just going to build for monetary sake, the problem with an inheritance, those that get it, really glad you're dead. But how do you build a legacy? A word that was used quite extensively. I've been an itinerant for 25 years, 64 countries now, 6 continents, over 5 million miles in the plane, which means I started traveling when my son was all of 3 months old, which means I failed as a father. I was never there to raise him, his mama did. In fact, I tell people she is the longest married single mother I know. On my brother's 18th birthday, I was preaching in a tent in India, and I wrote him a note welcoming him to being an adult. Such is my life. But for his college essay, he's now graduated, he's a mechanical engineer. But for his college essay, this boy of 18 wrote these words. He said, "The most inspirational person in my world is my father." How can that be? I was never there. He said, "My father's love for his family and love for his Lord are 2 traits I hope to emulate in my life. If I can have that kind of foundation in faith and family, my life should be okay." Folks, if you want to achieve new outcomes, stop majoring in minors. Stop majoring in minors. Sybil Stanton wrote a book called The 25-Hour Woman. In that she said, discipline is not on your back, needling you with imperatives. It's at your side, encouraging you with incentives. See, the day you make yourself a slave to discipline, the world will become your oyster. When you were shown that planner, it's a tool. But how do you make yourself a slave to discipline? Learn some techniques. Learn to do the most disagreeable thing first. As this wise old boy from Alabama once said, if you see a turtle on a fence post, you can rest assured it didn't get there by itself. But he also added, if you want to swallow a frog, you don't want to look at that sucker too long. He ain't going to get no prettier. New outlooks require radical changes. I began in this country and now as a global ambassador with a thicker accent than I have now. Language was a problem. Enunciation was a problem. Pronunciation was a problem. I couldn't tell a story to save my life. I couldn't tell a joke to save a speech. I remember many a parking lot in the early days, overhearing my own presentations to clients that I had secretly recorded. Now the government will do that for you, by the way. In the early days, you had to do it secretly. And then I would listen to the recording and open a dictionary and find other words that I could pronounce more easily. I was 31 and 32 at that time, and I already had a master's degree. How desperately do you want to change? How desperately do you want new? See, it doesn't have anything to do with age. Pablo Casals was 90 when he was practicing his cello, and someone said, "Why do you still practice? You're a maestro." He said, "I think I'm making progress." Matty Stepanek was all of 7 when he started appearing on Larry King Live. He died by the time he was 13, but wrote 7 books on poetry. Where do you stand in that gap of age? It has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has nothing to do with cultural origin, nothing to do with demographics, nothing to do with geography. I can show you people from every walk of life who have made it. What did they have? A unique selling proposition. 7 billion people on planet Earth. There is not another just like you. You're unique in every attribute. You have to look at it that way. If there was a chance that there would be someone else like you, you could begin to compete against someone else. Since there's only one of you, you have to compete with yourself. Going to bed every night with the desire to wake up tomorrow and be a little closer to the goals you set for yourself. Lastly, nurturing new desires takes a team. How do you begin to understand this world? I serve alongside a man by the name of Dr. Ravi Zacharias, who's considered one of the foremost thinkers in the Western Hemisphere. Dr. Zacharias was asked this question one time, "What are you doing?" by an elderly man. Being an erudite, sophisticated communicator, he tried to answer. And the gentleman said, "No, what you're doing right now is building memories. Make them good ones." What you're doing right now is building memories. Make them good ones. So how do we nurture the folks around us? You need to know more about the people you're trying to raise than you know about yourself. You need to know more about cultures and people groups for the very first time in human history. Digitally, we are much more covered and connected than we have ever been. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is read about this world. I read quite voraciously. I've read on average at least 1 book a week for the last 21 years. A wise man once said, "If you want to do something, do it immediately and do it flamboyantly." Another one said, "This eye's dim windows of the soul distorts the heavens from pole to pole and goads us to believe a lie when we see with and not through the eye." We're supposed to look through the eye with a conscience. So let me give you a few more steps and then we'll be done. The productive truth. It's never too late to start, but always too soon to quit. Learn communication that changes and challenges you. We have 5 levels in communication, and unfortunately, a majority of the human race seems to be stuck in level 1 or level 2. Level 1 is frivolous communication, meaningless banter. Earlier, one of the speakers said, "How did you build your legacy?" He said, "1 meeting at a time, 1 encounter at a time," which means there was no time for frivolous conversation. Meaningless banter. We all seem to waste a lot of time in conversation that has no bearing. Because we are so petrified of political correctness, we're afraid to say things that might upset people. People will walk up to me on an elevator and say, you're from India, aren't you? What gave it away, Sherlock? Or how about this doozy? I love spicy food. Well, eat a jalapeno. We've got more things than spicy food in India. What they're doing is they're saying, I don't know how to communicate with you, so I'm going to dance on the periphery of ignorance. Frivolous communication, meaningless. Any of you have teenagers? Any of you too bitter to talk about it? Okay, a few. When my boy was a teenager, communication with him went like this. Where are you going? Nowhere. What are you doing? Nothing. Who are you going with? No one. When are you coming back? Don't know. Hey, Pop, can you spot me $20? Let me get this straight. You want to go nowhere with no one to do nothing and not know when you're coming back, but you want me to finance it. I'm not the government. I was speaking in Arizona, and I said something to this effect. I said, as far as Indians go, I'm the real deal. And someone actually took offense to that in this world of safe spaces. She came up to the front and said, I can't believe you said she said, I'm a full-blooded Indian. I said, okay, come up to the front. If you're going to destroy me, do it with my microphone. I said, do you want me to answer your question culturally, historically, geographically, or factually? She said, I don't know, those are all big words, but I'm a full-blooded Indian. I said, ma'am, Columbus was looking for me. He found you by mistake. See, we've got so much revisionist nonsense that we are standing on the periphery of life, not able to enjoy one of the most sacred gifts given to us, the ability to have joy in what we speak and raise another person's heart because you're able to pour into them. We have to get away from frivolous communication. Level 2 is factual communication. Factual communication is just Sergeant Friday-esque. Tell me a little bit about your company, and you go into a verbal vomit. That machine gun, everything you heard, blah, blah. You don't ask them what. See, you have to get to level 3, which is feeling. In feeling communication, you're standing on the same side, looking in the same direction. You become consultative in your approach. I remember I came back from a trip and my bride comes up to me and she says, apparently I'm the only one in the house who knows how to load a dishwasher. I made the mistake of factually saying, apparently you are. When I took the fork out of my eye and stopped the bleeding, I found it rather harsh. See, what was she saying? She's saying, I don't need a solution from you. I've been running this house, no thanks to you. When she asks me a question, she doesn't want an answer. She wants me to just say, I'm so sorry, I'm not around to do it more. Communicate at the feeling level. Now, in my own defense, I don't understand the whole concept of a right way, apparently, to load a dishwasher. I don't know what you ladies are afraid of. Why does it have to be plate, 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 bowl, 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 fork, 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 knife, knife? What are you afraid of? That during the sud cycle, the plate and the bowl are going to go on a date and refuse to go back to their respective... It's a dishwasher. Throw them in and hit go. Level 4 is fellowship. See, in frivolous communication, nobody cares you're there. In factual communication, they just react because you're there. In feeling communication, they respond because you're there. In fellowship communication, they continue to perform because you were once there. I had the privilege in June of 1994 to meet Saint Teresa of Calcutta, who was then just Mother Teresa. I went into her ashram with a $500 check from my then boss, Zig Ziglar. I walked in and gave her the money. What did I want more than anything else? A picture. This is before cell phones. Incidentally, you know why we call it a selfie? We are so lazy we can't even spell narcissistic. I asked Mother Teresa for a picture and she said, I don't do this for publicity. I'm thinking, I do. And I ran behind Mother Teresa trying to get a picture. Didn't happen. When I finally got the privilege of taking a picture, my camera that had worked all through Asia stopped working. And I realized I was up against divine odds. As I was leaving our ashram, she handed me 10 letters. What are these, pray tell? Oh, these are letters of encouragement to my sisters who man the AIDS hospices in Washington and New York, San Francisco, and Dallas. Why are you giving me the letters? Well, you're going back to America anyway. If I put postage from India, it would use hard funds that came because of the orphanage. You're going there anyway. Why don't you mail them there? My fickle mind is thinking, I just gave you $500. I don't have a picture. Now you're stiffing me for another $370 in postage. But immediately I began to realize at least that plane was not going to go down. I was carrying holy cargo. I came to Dallas and I mailed Mother Teresa the letters. I mailed the letters that she asked me to mail. And I wrote her a note. Dear Mother Teresa, thank you for allowing me to be a small messenger in your Great Commission fellowship. She sent me a picture. On one side was scripture. I've carved the name on the palm of my hand. I will never forget you. I have loved you. I have claimed you. A combination from Isaiah. But on the front was a note that changed my life that sits on my nightstand. Dear Krish Dhanam, say yes to the least of humanity. By picking up those most deserving in the eyes of a loving God, you will have participated in the greatest good of all. That was the day my bride and I decided that we would do something for the land of our birth. I started a foundation many years later. I go to India 5 times a year and put on events for people who cannot pay to come anywhere and who cannot pay to go anywhere. But it was Mother Teresa's seed that she sowed all the way back in 2005 that gives me a cause now, fellowship. They continue to perform because you were once there. Wouldn't that be a great legacy? 15 years from now, 20 years from now, this very ballroom just being used to house one team. Not the entire company, just one team. And one person standing up here and saying, because of the vision cast by 4 people, all the way back in 2017, we are where we are. Fellowship. Change the way. And last is freedom. Freedom communication, you don't care what people say because you know you speak the truth. See, words matter. If I told my bride, I said, sweetheart, you look like the first day of spring, I sound like a romantic husband. If I tell her you look like the last day of a long, hard winter, it's the same day. If I tell her when I look at you, the hands of time cease, I sound like Milton. But if I tell her you have a face that'll stop a clock, it's the same thing. See, words matter. So when you look at this, never too late to start, but always too soon to quit, ask yourself, what is your self-talk? Are the words coulda, woulda, shoulda, hesitation hill? If only I had gotten earlier, if I knew someone further up, is the time right for me? 77% of all self-talk is negative. 77% of all illnesses are psychosomatic. We live in very, very precarious times. Change your input. Innovation has to follow inspiration. You have to change different things. You have to change different ideas. Now, I have a thick skin. Very few things bother me. I remember when we first moved to Dallas, our goal was 4 years after I landed in this country, I would own my own home because I never went to school here. So it would be the equivalent of me having gone for 4 years to school and my first job, I buy a house. Anila and I lived in some very desolate places. She comes from a fairly affluent family, but she partook in my misery so that we could achieve a dream. September of 1990, 4 years after we had moved to this country, we moved into our first home in Flower Mound, Texas. And I was so excited. I was out there mowing my yard. I now owned a small piece of the greatest land on planet Earth. I owned my own mower, and I owned my own yard, and I was mowing it when the neighbor comes up and says, "How much?" See, he mistook me for the guy who cuts your yard. Now, I could have reacted. I could have said, "I'm a tax-paying immigrant. I'm going to report you to the authorities. This is bad speech," and we could create a safe space for me. But I'm also a capitalist, and I'm also a salesperson. So I said, "Which one is yours?" He said, "That one." I said, "Let's go take a look." We went and took a look at his yard. I said, "30? This is early 90s. I said, $30? He says, "Really, front and back?" I said, "Sure. When I mow mine, I'll mow yours." He said, "What do you mean, yours?" I said, "Yeah, we just bought this house yesterday." He said, "Oh my God, I made a horrible mistake." I said, "I'm a speaker. This example is going to get me a lot of mileage." See, it worked. You laughed. It's an innocuous example, but you laughed. Laughter. Understand, folks, if you want to have innovation that follows the inspiration, learn to laugh. We have lost the ability to laugh. You need to laugh. People are laughing at you anyway. Mr. Ziegler used to say, there's some new scientific evidence that if you have a tendency to laugh and you suppress the laughter, it'll come back inside and spread your hips. So let it out. It could get expensive on the wardrobe. Innovation. The desire to change. But why don't we laugh when it is such a healthy... See, when you laugh, how many of you are willing to admit that about 40 minutes odd into my talk, you are physiologically more alert than when I began? Yeah. Do you think it's because I put something in the seats? No. I said something from here that you processed with information and it gave you a high. The receptacles at the end of your brain stems gave you what is called the neurotransmitter release, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. A total stranger on an afternoon of your life could posit words into your head that give you an internal jogging. Why don't we do that every day? Because we think we confuse motivation with manipulation. When you want to build a team, motivate them so that they will look better, not because you look better. If you raise them up, maybe you'll rise along. But do it because Mr. Ziegler's core philosophy was you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. But that has to be a philosophy. It cannot be a tactic. You have to do it because it's the right thing to do. And lastly, innovation versus invention. For whatever reason, we think that we have to reinvent the wheel. You don't. People who have come before you have built the system. Their own experience has allowed them to build a better system. Their own life journey has allowed them to create a better process. Their own identities and relationships have allowed to put forward things that you don't need to learn. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. We are so skeptical about everything. Some people are so narrow-minded they look through a keyhole with both eyes. You've also noticed that a narrow mind and a fat head usually come on the same body. So get off this paralysis of analysis and ask yourself, how much am I going to think through this before? See, what's the worst that can happen? Watch me carefully. You try something you've never tried before, you fall flat on your face, you break even. You didn't have it to begin with. You gave it a shot. You came up short. Big whoop. But we stand paralyzed on the periphery of life. Success, my friends, is not looking at the isms and schisms that prevent you. Success is going to where success is and hoping by sheer centripetal force you're sucked in. That's how it works. You are going to get your nose bloodied. Many years ago, I said a poem in one of my seminars, 9 years ago. I said, I may never gather diamonds. I may never amass gold. My colleagues may consider me a failure when my business life is told. But my dear son, my only boy, if you grow up godly, I'll be glad, for I know I'll have succeeded as your dad. Simple poem. There was a young man by the name of Brian Manhart who listened to that, who watched that DVD over and over again and wrote this poem down. That first Christmas, he didn't have enough to give anybody in his family anything. So to his boy Joe, he printed this poem out, replaced a picture from a photo frame, put the poem into it, and gave it to Joe saying, "From Dad, Christmas 2007. A poem by an immigrant who came to this country on a DVD is altering a father's life, trying to bless his son in some way. About 4 months ago, I was speaking at an event in Dallas when I felt a hand on my shoulder. And a man touched me, and I looked up, and he had big tears. "Oh my God, it's really you." I said, "What's going on?" He says, "I cannot tell you how much of an impact you've had on my life." He says, "I was 16, one of a big family, when my father told me, 'Brian, you can stay under our roof, you can eat our food, but I can't buy you anything. Whatever you get from here on out will be your own.'" He said, "I've been on my own since I was 16. When I couldn't give my son something for the first year, I gave him your poem as a gift. Today my life is infinitely better. I bought a ranch on the north end of town where we do camps for children. All my 3 kids that came after Joe have received the same poem as their first gift. But I'm so excited to meet you because you have had a greater impact on my life than my father. I'm a lowly immigrant who came to this country all of 55 years old. How can I change a life?" Maybe that's what you're thinking today when you hear the words legacy. I can't change a life. I'm all of 20. I'm 25. I live in Hong Kong. I can't change a life. Well, let me tell you the rest of the story. Brian then went and hugged my bride and said, "Thank you for letting your husband go. Because he's left you so many times lonely, people like me have a chance to have hope." Sacrifice. When Daniel said we have to roll up our sleeves and work 20-hour days, that's sacrifice. But I was in India when I got the most excited call from my boy, away from him again. He said, "Pop, you're not going to believe it, but a man came up to me and held my hands and said, 'Nicholas, let me feel the hands your father has blessed. Dad, I'm so proud of you.'" Sacrifice. There is no easy way, folks. If there was an easy way, someone would have found it. Life is tough. But if you're tough on yourself, life will become infinitely easier on you. But have a thick hide about this. Put a little pep in your step, a little bounce to your ounce. Have some fun along the way. Earl Loomis said, as individuals, we deny our talents and our abilities because to acknowledge their existence will now force us to use them. John Maxwell said, if there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. Alfred Adler, the great psychologist, said, hope is the foundational quality of all change. So what is your hope today? What is your dream today? What is your aspiration? You want to be a game changer? You want to be a boundary basher? You want to be a vision caster? You want to be a team builder? You want to be a brand builder? Ask yourself. 7 billion, planet Earth, only one you. Will you stand on this side saying, I wish I had? Or 20 years later when a team is meeting here and you're the honored guest because you're at the highest level in the organization, will you be able to stand up here and say, I'm glad I did? I wish I had is a life of regret. I'm glad I did is one of possibility. Let me end with one of the fun stories that took place in my life many years ago. I had done a seminar for a Fortune 30 company. I was flying higher than a kite. I had arrived. I don't know what it's like for you to land in a country with no money. I remember sitting in that room holding all my life's possessions in that cold March morning at the John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. And my bride had to come back later through the other line, 2.5 hours. They interrogated me in that room. That's how they did it back then. I actually went through a citizenship test where she asked me, tell me what happened in 1862. And I was ready to put a verbal dump on her because I'd been planning. She said, oh no, honey, in America it's multiple choice. I knew I was going to make it. I also remember that glorious day in 2004 when I sat in Mayor Rudy Giuliani's seats at the same New York watching a Yankees game. The American dream. I was in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'd just done a seminar for a Fortune 30 company. I'm living the dream. I'm standing outside an airport hotel, minding my own business. Now, when I stand outside a hotel, I wear jeans and a t-shirt. I don't dress like this. No need to. Now, when you're in West Palm Beach, Florida, you look like me, you're wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and you're standing outside an airport hotel, odds are a lot of people do not mistake you for being Zig Ziglar's international cultural ambassador. So here's the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. The shuttle driver was running late, so I picked up my bags and put them in. Baggage handling is easy, you just lift. The lady standing next to me looked like she'd fallen asleep in a salad bar. She had the hat with the whole fruit number working. She used her nose, which doubled as a pointer, and asked me to put her bags in the van, which I did. The guy standing next to her now wants to get involved in this little immigrant episode. So he grunts for me to put his bags in the van. I did. Now, I just got done bragging on this country. I told you I'm a salesperson. I told you I'm a capitalist. So some of you overachievers know what I did next. I went for the tip. I put my hand in front of the gal. She gave me $1 and change. I put my hand in front of the guy. He gave me $1 and change. They were ignorant. I made $3. What a country. Now, we got into the van. I flipped my luggage tag over, which has my title, Intergalactic Yoda for Motivational Mecca or whatever. The guy looked at my business card and he says, oh my God, I made a horrible mistake. I said, you're not getting your money back. At which point he said the words that make the story told and retold. He said, I wish all my employees had your disposition. See, I've talked for going on 50 minutes. And all I've talked about is disposition. The crying need of the hour. When we stand in front of that mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, here I am, what's my call? When you hear the words, Vaseo, welcome home. Your search is over. Your ship has arrived. See, most people will stand on the harbor of life waiting for their ship to come in, knowing in their heart it never set sail. And here you are, waiting. And the people are saying, welcome home. So let me close like I've always closed. Folks, I have literally traveled the world and the 7 seas. I've been on my highs, and many a night I wept on my knees. But of all the groups I've spoken to, the most humbled I felt is today with you. At the back of a room, I used to sell books and tapes and wonder if one day I would be the speaker. 25 years later, I am. I'm Anila's husband and Nick's dad. God bless you.